Hello there, and blessings of Sarwen to you. That's also known as Hallowe'en, All Hallows Eve, the Day of the Dead. There are many words. Also there is the word bon. Many words. So today I'm going to share with you what happened to me last night. And I went to 777 Silver Street, Michael the astrologer's house, where he lives with Marianne, the flautist and clarinetist, and I was invited by Jeannie, and the title was the Glastonbury Day of the Dead. So there was no question my interest was piqued, and I'm so grateful that I went. It was a really enlightening experience, which I feel like I want to share with you this morning. So here we are now in autumn, and still most of the leaves are green in the ivy thorn woods, but if I look up you can see that the green on the leaves above me on the oak tree is starting to turn yellow. So we really are in autumn now. So one of the things I discovered about the Day of the Dead, Halloween, Samhain, is it's a really ancient tradition, and Jeannie shared some of her researches with us, and the conclusion is it's a practice which is worldwide. There doesn't seem to be a culture that has chosen to ignore this particular time of year. And one of the observations she made, which I thought was really important, is we tend to think of it as being for us, because here we are in the northern hemisphere. To us it's that particular part of the autumn. It's getting colder. Normally the leaves are falling off the trees in huge numbers, or they've already fallen and the trees are bare. And this is what we associate with this time of year for us, and so to relate it to the Day of the Dead seems fairly obvious. But it's the same all over the world, the southern hemisphere as well, where there is no such connotation. So here's the thing. First of all, we began the evening with John Crow. John Crow is a shaman, a filmmaker, a writer, and who knows what else. Fascinating man. And Jeannie and John have been friends for best part of a quarter of a century, I think it is, something like that. And John shared with us about something called the crossbones, and he's someone who discovered that there's a particular part of London where women, we would use the term today, sex workers. In those days they were called whores, and it won't surprise you to know that they got treated particularly badly, because of course patriarchy has always been the exploitation of women, and it's been going on for more than 6,000 years, so it's not a surprise, I know. And in those times, in the medieval times, going back hundreds of years, and there were times that these sex workers who'd outlived their usefulness were cast into wells, amongst other things. It's a particularly insane thing to do when you think about, as a human being, we all rely upon water. There was no mains water system, it was wells and springs, that's where the water came from. So to think that people actually would do this, and it's a common theme in the Korean historical TV shows I've watched. Someone inconvenient, dispose of the body, get into a bit of a panic, straight down the well, let's create some cholera, shall we? Horrible. So he had been doing a lot of inner work with regard to these women, and let's just be honest, there would be children as well involved in all this. So what he did is he brought this whole subject to the awareness of the world at large, and there was actually a performance in the Globe Theatre, which is a theatre on the south bank of the River Thames, built in the image of Shakespeare's tradition. So he was sharing a little bit with us about this, and there was a particular being that came to him, and her name was Goose. And Goose literally changed his life as a shamanic practitioner. Goose clearly was a guide, And she was the one that guided him into this awareness of these terrible injustices. And what he chose to do, with very much her guidance, is to create a special ceremony. And this ceremony takes place in London at the time of the year of the Day of the Dead, which is where we're at now. And I'm sure that it's an extremely moving and profound ceremony, and it is literally to release all the souls that were trapped and treated so horribly in the last moments of their lives, and almost certainly throughout their lives as well. So he has created an abbreviated version of this, which takes 15 minutes. And I was so grateful to go to this event and be thrown into what I would call a genuine, real ceremony, something with a point to it, something done with panache, with skill, with charisma, with flair. Such a beautiful ceremony. And there are various things that took place, but one of the things I especially want to mention to you, after we've done the preparations, we've done invocations, and he would say these words, and we would join in with him and repeat after him, and it was all to do with celebrating the freedom of these women from having been trapped in that way, and also tuning into all of the dead. And we were invited to speak out loud in the ceremony the names of those who we are aware of, ancestors and others. And when he'd finished, I joined in straight away, excuse me, started calling out the names of those that I'm aware of, that I have loved and that have passed into spirit and gone off to the next great adventure in the multiverse. So that was a lovely, beautiful, moving experience. And there's other things he did as well. And after John Crow finished, we then had a woman, and she recited some poetry which she created, accompanied by someone on the mandolin. Beautiful. And we had Jeannie talking about the history of this time of the year, and giving us this really interesting observation. It's a worldwide phenomenon. So when she went deeper into it, she discovered that historically, going back, there was a comet, and the comet appeared at this time of the year, and the comet has this very particular name. And delving deeper, here's the information. Historically, there have been huge numbers of people wiped out. We think about wars, and that's true, but also natural cataclysms and catastrophes. And the most obvious one that many of us know about is the fall of Atlantis. It is said that the scientists of Atlantis have become perverted, and we're doing genetic engineering research and creating abominations and monstrosities. Some people say that's why Atlantis fell. Other people say they created a particular microbe which was so dangerous that if it had been allowed to spread across the world, it would have meant the end of life as we know it. There are many different stories, legends and opinions about this, but nonetheless, the thing we know is there was a cataclysm and huge numbers of people perished in a very short period of time. And this is associated with the arrival of this comet. There's a link with the Pleiades, and there are other links. So very grateful to Jeannie for sharing that with us. And so her thesis is that the reason why everyone chooses the same time of year to celebrate it is because there was a heavenly portent, something people observed in the heavens, and that was associated with a huge drop in numbers of the human population. Makes a lot of sense the way she explained it, so I wanted to share that with you too. And we finished part one with a storyteller. Now, I am rarely as moved by a storyteller as I was by this one. I don't remember her name because I became utterly spellbound by the story that she told us. It was so moving, it was so deep. It was to do with a toad being who captured children and turned them into animals and kept them in cages. And the young woman, the hero of the story, was someone who used to transport people on a boat, and she got into a situation with this toad being and was invited to dinner and went deep into the earth and was told, you can explore, you can stay the night, but don't go through the black door. She goes to the black door and she finds all these animals in cages, and she is told by the squirrel that she has to trick the toad being. And so the toad being and the young woman play this game of truth or dare, and eventually in this game, the young woman tricks the toad being to revealing his true name, his true nature, and it all comes out. And all the beings that are now animals, which were once human and children, have all become saved and all become free. And that's the other thing about this time of year. I used to find this time of year incredibly difficult, because I do know that in terms of satanic activities, this is one of the worst times of the year for children to suddenly and mysteriously disappear, never to be seen again. And alas, this is still going on today. So that's an aspect I'm aware of. And so in a sense, for me, the story was returning my awareness to the fact that we still live in times where terrible things are done to children. That's still not changed, although more and more is being done by such people as Tim Ballard, who created Operation Underground Railroad, which I've spoken about before, the film The Sound of Freedom, which came out, I believe it was about 18 months ago, something like that. So what a time of year it is. And at the end of part one, I knew that I'd taken in so much information. I knew I was very strongly and deeply moved by the names of those I called out into the ceremonial space. I knew it was time to go home, reflect, and that's a really big part this time of year. It's a liminal time. It's time when the veil becomes thin. The veil between the 3D realms and the other realms becomes particularly tenuous. And so it's a great time to be on your own, to be quiet. And so I spent the remainder of the evening just sitting by my open fire, just contemplating all that I'd experienced. And all this took place at 777 Silver Street, Glastonbury. Michael the Astrologer. I've mentioned this to you in a previous film, where I was describing to you another event I went to, and how he was guided to unearth the stone, literally, and the stone pretty much commanded him to create this museum, which he's turned pretty much the entire terraced house into. It's amazing. You walk in, there's a lovely open fire in the grate, there's a little corner where punch is served, and we pay our entry fee, a long trestle table, and then the open courtyard space, which is particularly beautiful this time of year in the dark. And then in the back, the ancient medieval lecture theatre, which is where the performance took place. So I felt like I wanted to share that with you. It's one of the things that is not advertised in the Oracle. So I just want to take up this issue with you. So some people regard, so the name Halloween refers to the Christianization of an ancient season, which is called Samhain. And Halloween is regarded to be simply the 31st of October. Samhain is regarded to be the days at the end of October and the beginning of November. So I'm walking along the path here on the 2nd of November, so we're still very much in the time of Samhain. So if you haven't celebrated or done something appropriate yet, you've still got time to do it. The veil is still thin at this time of year. And when she started to talk about what went on in Madagascar, my goodness me, that was one of the most extraordinary, dramatic ones. They actually exhumed the bodies, It's called the turning of the bones. They turn the bones, and they do all sorts of really bizarre things, dressing them up and parading them around the churchyard or whatever it is, the burial ground. Quite bizarre. In China it's called Bon, and it takes a month. In Korea it's called Chuseok. So all these different parts of the world, Peru, Mexico, it goes on. And one of the really important points I grasped from listening, especially to John Crow speaking, is this time of year it's about the dead, and because it's about the dead, it's also very much about the living, because we are the living and we are having time to contemplate those that have passed. So it's very much about being alive, and we see that most especially in Mexico, where they go really wild and have lots of big celebrations and dancing and singing, lots of people having sex and just thoroughly enjoying themselves. So not everyone that chooses to regard death as wearing black. Indeed, in China and Korea, the appropriate colour is white. And when Cinda, the woman I married, died in 2005, she had made it very clear that what she wanted was for everyone in the church to be wearing bright colours. And so we did. So it's strange to think it links to a comet and the death of huge numbers of people all at one time. It seems that incidentally that's what we're celebrating today. So now you can see, look at the ash tree ahead there, that really has lost all its leaves, whereas the oak tree has still got some. There we go. So thank you very much for coming on this journey with me. All the love to you. And if you've got any experiences you want to share about what people do in your part of the world about the Day of the Dead, most interested to hear from you. Thank you. All the love to you.